Hello and welcome to the Roost News, the place for all things volunteer. I'm Nancy McCammon Hansen. I'm coming to you from a bright and sunny but very cold Fort Wayne, Indiana. And my guests today are Emily Gorman of our state office, which is in Indianapolis, and Michael Roeger of Fort Wayne. And we're going to be discussing volunteers and advocacy to make cities in Indiana better places to live for seniors. So, would you each tell us a little bit about your work and how you came to this AARP project? And Emily, we will start with you. Ladies first.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Nancy. It's great to be here. So as you said, I'm Emily Gorman. I am the director of community engagement for AARP Indiana. As you said, we're based out of Indianapolis, but we work in communities across the state, and one of those communities is Fort Wayne. And so I guess my background and my passion for working on advocacy in Fort Wayne stems from trying to make communities more livable and accessible for people of all ages. And we do that through our advocacy work with our volunteers, working on various different projects, such as what we're going to talk about today, Complete Streets. We also work on housing issues, caregiving, all sorts of things like that. So that's my background.
Okay, thank you. And Mike, how did you get involved with this?
I my what in late in 2022, my wife found an application for the Indiana Walking College, which I had never heard of, and I applied and was accepted as a fellow for 2023. It's a program through America Walks and AARP, and in that, over a course of about 6 months, 6 to 8 months, a group of us from across the state. We talked about how um, automobiles, cars have messed up our cities and how we can work to make our cities more walkable and bikeable and safer for people who are not in a car. And so before that, I had lived our family lived car free for about 2.5 years in the mid last decade, and that opened my eyes to a lot of issues around um, active transportation.
Okay, thank you. And Mike did an interview this week on our on Channel 21 WPTA about pedestrians and what it's like to walk in Fort Wayne with the traffic that we have, and we have a lot of traffic in Fort Wayne. So, first question. People are talking a lot these days about advocacy, but what I thought as I was starting to write questions for this interview was that there may be a difference between between actually being an advocate and talking about advocacy versus a very common expression that you hear, why doesn't someone do something about this? So what's your response to when you hear somebody say, why doesn't somebody do something about this? What's your response to a question like that?
Um, well, I loved this question, and I was thinking about it this morning, and I guess my first thought was, I think why doesn't somebody do something about this is a great place for anyone to start thinking, actually, could I be the one that could do something about this? And so, in my own personal experience, I live just on the east side of Indianapolis. When I think in that way, my job that I'm currently in has led me to realize that I actually can reach out and advocate for things that are important to me myself. And so if it's the speed limit on our roads, or if it's, something related to the community that you live in, sending a letter or going to your local city council meeting, learning more, listening, and speaking up, is something that anybody can do. And I think people often don't realize that they do have the power to do that. So to me, that's what it's all about. I think advocacy is all about amplifying people's voices, amplifying your own voice, For us at AARP, we advocate to stand up for maybe people who aren't able to, or the collective people 50 and older group, and making sure that their voices are heard and advocated for. And so I think, the attitude of like, why isn't somebody doing something about this? Well, it could be you that is doing something about this by using your voice to speak up. And that's what advocacy is all about. So empowering people to recognize that they have the power to do that.
Great answer. Great answer. Mike, what's your feeling about someone who says, why doesn't somebody do something about this?
Well, I agree with what Emily is saying, but I think there's a fear of speaking up, that your ideas will get shot down. I know I have I've run into that with a lot of the things that I believe passionately in, that people, nah, that can't be done, or we've always done it this way, but why have we always done it this way? And and I've discovered Fort Wayne has a lot of bureaucracy, and who to talk to is it's hard to figure out who the person is to talk to. And I've made contact with my city council representative on a number of issues around walking, and I don't know if it gets through or not. And I've written letters to the editor. Again, I don't know if they get through or not, but you have to just keep speaking up, I believe.
Okay, so basically you're both saying that advocacy is supporting an issue, speaking out about it, educating the public about it, and working to make the world a better place.
And
Yeah.
can I
Pardon?
add something?
Sure.
I think it's important to find uh, like-minded people. And when I started the walking college, I thought I was on an island in what I believed. And through the walking college, I discovered others in Fort Wayne who an active transportation coalition here in Allen County that I did not know existed when I started. And so I've found a group of like-minded people who we can work together, because you're not generally, if you have an idea of how to improve your community, others also have that same idea. You just have to somehow find them.
Yeah, I was just going to add as well. I think to Mike's point, if you aren't, not everyone is comfortable with speaking up or standing in front of city council or however that might look, advocacy for in your mind, but either affiliating yourself with a collective advocacy group can be one great way to, not feel like you're on an island, and you have others and, together your voice is very powerful. But also, I think people sometimes don't think that advocacy doesn't have to look like, speaking in front of a big group of people or powerful people. It can be as simple as a letter or, a post on social media or a letter to the newspaper or something like that. It doesn't have to be, a big, scary event. It can be whatever is in your comfort zone or affiliating yourself with other groups. Is equally as powerful. So I just wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you. Um, Fort Wayne, for those of you who are listening and watching, is in the northeast corner of the state of Indiana, and we are the third largest city in the state.
Second, second.
Second largest city in the state, after Indianapolis, obviously. And in the 19 years that we have lived here, I am so amazed at the trail system that has been put through this city so that people can bike and not be on the city streets. People can walk, not be on city streets. And there's a real movement going on now with a need for some better public transportation. We do have a city bus system, but I don't know that there's a cab company in town. So Emily, how did AARP get involved with this city group?
Yeah. So Mike kind of alluded to this earlier, but Complete Streets is something we've been working on in Fort Wayne for a couple of years now. And really, it all began from the collective recognizing that cities and streets across the entire country are built with cars in mind, not for any other road user, really. And Fort Wayne specifically is an incredibly car-centric city. You really need a car to get around. If you need to get your groceries, if you have to go to the pharmacy, or a doctor's appointment, it's very difficult to get from A to B if you don't have a car. And I'm sure Mike can speak to this. He experienced living in Fort Wayne without a car for a couple of years, how that actually was getting around. So I love hearing Mike speak about that. But for us, AARP has been involved with the Complete Streets approach from its inception about 10, 11 years ago. There's a National Complete Streets Coalition that we're affiliated with. And so essentially all it means is that we are encouraging city leaders, engineers, road designers to consider other road users when they are updating or building new streets, making improvements to existing streets. It's not something that is a one size fits all. I think that's a common misconception that complete streets means that every single street needs to have a bike lane and a crosswalk and, this, that, and the other thing. That's not what complete streets means. Complete Streets is an approach to designing streets that has considerations made for other road users other than just a car. So that might mean, adding a bus stop to an area that otherwise is very unconnected or disconnected from the rest of the city. Or it can be something as simple as lengthening the amount of time that a crosswalk is flashing that it's safe to walk so that people who are in wheelchairs or maybe older and slower have time to get across the street safely. Adding curb cuts so that if you are in a wheelchair or you're pushing a stroller or something, that you can get across the street safely. It's simple things like that, reducing the speed limit that can really help people navigate the city more easily, feel more connected, and essentially our goal is to allow people to age in their homes for as long as possible, to not have to go into long-term care or nursing homes to get the care that they need. You should be able to get everything you need while you're still living in your own home. And that's our goal, is to make sure that, people can live in their communities for as long as possible, because studies show that that's what's best for people and that's what people prefer. So that's how we got involved and why we're involved.
One of the best things I think about this program, and this is going to sound kind of stupid, I guess, but curb cuts, because my husband and I like to go out and walk. And when you're in downtown Fort Wayne, you have to park your car and walk. And I can't tell you how many times I have tripped on a curb and fallen. So for those of us who aren't terribly graceful, curb cuts are a great thing. Mike, I'm going to come over to you and ask you a little bit about volunteering as an advocate. What kind of feedback do you get from people because you are a volunteer who's advocating for better streets and for better ways to get around Fort Wayne? And do people share their ideas with you, or do you come up with them all on your own, or how does all that work for you?
Well, I don't come up with them all on my own. And the Three Rivers Active Streets group, which I'm part of, we get together from time to time and talk about ideas, talk about ways that we can make Fort Wayne less car centric. There are podcasts I listen to. There are books I've read. A great book that I think every single policymaker in Indiana should read is Walkable Cities by Jeff Speck. It is a book that, and then he has a follow-up book on the rules of a walkable city. And some of the things that not only make put in sidewalks, but make your city attractive to walk in. On West Main in Fort Wayne, we have I think it's three, maybe 4 blocks of nothing but parking lots, which is crazy for a downtown area. And those should be developed into properties. And so the feedback I get when I suggest that we have too much parking in Fort Wayne, I get, no, we have to have a place to put our cars. Why would anybody come downtown if you can't have a place to put your car? Because there's attractions in downtown. That's why you come downtown. You don't come downtown to park. And other things I've gotten pushback on is when I've suggested that maybe we should turn our one-way streets downtown into two-way streets. Would make it safer for everybody, both in the car and outside the car. It would make it would help businesses on those one-way streets to be more attractive because you zip by. Oh, there was Burger King. How do I get to Burger King? Zip by on past Burger King on Jefferson Boulevard. How do you get back there without two-way streets or the downtown Wendy's or downtown Domino's, whatever? And so we've created so I've suggested, and people said, well, that if you make it two-way, then people can't get through downtown quickly. Well, the idea I would think is to get people downtown and keep them downtown so they spend their money downtown. But so I've gotten pushback on some of my ideas on that, as a negative pushback from people who are tied to their cars.
Emily, you cover Fort Wayne over to South Bend, the northern part of the state of Indiana. How do you respond when volunteers, and I'm a local volunteer here in Fort Wayne, present you with an idea on something that maybe AARP ought to be doing, say in South Bend or Fort Wayne?
Yeah, so I think what many people maybe don't recognize is that at the very core of AARP's mission and goal is, and just everything that we do centers around our volunteers. We have a huge volunteer base all across the country. And our volunteers really are our boots on the ground, the people who live in the communities, the people who know best and have lived experience about, what it's like to be 50 and older, and the real world things that you're facing. And so we start by listening. So I write things down. I run things up the chain, for lack of better terms. We're hearing this. What could we do about it? And kind of start there. And many of our best ideas or the work, the advocacy that we get involved in stems from our volunteers. Somebody on our team will say, hey, I'm hearing that people are having issues with affording their utilities or something like that. And so that really allows us to then be in tune with what's most important to people. And then we can really start, pushing for those things. But it's just listening to people and their real world needs is really, I think, my method and our method for success across AARP.
A good example of that, and Emily, I don't know if you were part of this conversation, but at one of the Chamber of Commerce dinners or luncheons about legislation, I suggested to Amber, who works in our state office, follows the state legislature, that grandparents be encouraged to take their grandchildren to register to vote. And that is something that the League of Women Voters has encouraged parents to do. And I'm a League of Women Voters member, and she immediately pulled out a notepad and wrote that down. And I thought,
Exactly.
this is good, because you don't always get that when you're a volunteer. You don't always get an immediate response from a paid employee. So that was great. So kudos to Amber.
Yeah.
If somebody tells you they'd like to be an advocate for AARP, what do you tell them they need to know, and what do they need to do to get involved? And Emily, we'll start with you, but then we're going to move over to Mike to talk about it from the volunteer side.
I think specifically if you would like to be an advocate for AARP, the first place to start would be just recognizing that advocacy doesn't have to be scary. It can be as simple as just sharing your story of your own personal lived experience. Sometimes that is the most engaging and important thing that we can do when we're advocating with any lawmaker across, local, state, federal, any of the above. Having people who are willing to share their story and their lived experience as a constituent is incredibly powerful. And so just recognizing that it can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a nerd about government or policy or anything like that. And you don't have to have a background in it. It just having a story and sharing your lived experience is really all you need. For AARP specifically, we look for people who live in our target communities. One of them is Fort Wayne, as that's where we're really focusing a lot of our efforts. We provide a bunch of training and support and resources so that if you are a volunteer advocate, you can feel confident and you can feel informed on everything you need to know. But whether your passion is transportation, walkability, healthcare, caregiving, I'm pretty sure we can find a place for you in AARP and what we're working on for the 50 plus. So I'd say start by recognizing that what you care about is really what's most important, and then we go from there.
Okay, Mike, as a volunteer advocate or an advocate volunteer, what would you tell somebody who came up to you and said, "Gee, I'd like to volunteer. I'd like to be an advocate"?
Um, I would suggest find something that you're passionate about, that you believe in. Not just, because a lot of things are fly by night. You have a great idea today, and then you forget about it. But find a an issue that you really feel strongly about, and mine happens to be making cities more walkable.
Okay. So, one of the things that I struggle with because I do a lot of volunteer work is that can you be an advocate for more than one issue? For example, I volunteer with Bread for the World that deals with hunger. And I also volunteer with League of Women Voters to get people out to vote. Um, is it okay to be an advocate for more than one issue at a time, or are people going to be saying, "Oh, it's just her again"? So don't pay any attention to her because she's always talking about something. Can you honestly advocate for more than one issue and be taken seriously?
I mean, I would say absolutely you can advocate for more than one issue. I think if people are saying, oh, it's her again, that tells me that you're making some kind of an impact. You're showing up, you're there, they recognize you. And so I mean, I think that's a positive in my opinion. But I
Just makes
think
my day.
I think that I don't think you're alone either. I have other volunteers in other communities that I've heard say the same thing that, people say, oh, it's her again, but it's a positive thing. I think a lot of issues are interconnected. I think when you think about it that way, it's all about, like you said, making the world a better place. And many of those issues that matter most to people are connected to one another. I think different organizations specialize in different things. And so sometimes you do have to take off that metaphorical hat and, I'm volunteering for this organization, not this one right now, but it's okay to volunteer for multiple different things and advocate for multiple different things. So yeah, I think it's a positive. I don't think you can over advocate or over volunteer by any means, unless you're
Okay.
burning yourself out, of course.
Yeah, well, that happens too. Um, what are some of the major issues that AARP volunteers should be paying attention to and knowing more about?
I think some of the issues that I would encourage folks to pay attention to that we are working on are things like obviously access to transportation, affordable and accessible housing, making food insecurity is a big one, caregiving, um, those are the big ticket items that I think people should pay attention to because it impacts your daily life and your day-to-day living. Utilities is another one that we do a lot of advocacy on, keeping rates affordable for people who are on fixed incomes, things like that. So, and I think specifically what we've been working on recently in Fort Wayne around walkability and safer streets. Really does impact everybody. Everybody needs to get around. And so I think just keeping an eye on local policy changes and opportunities there, listening to your city leaders is my advice. But yeah.
And Mike, since we're both baby boomers, what
Mhm.
issues do you think people in our generation need to be out advocating for?
Well, I think protecting Social Security, protecting Medicare, Medicaid. Those are big ones, especially with things happening now in Washington. Um, the I think those are those are big things. I think we also need to pay attention to um, Emily said affordable housing. You know, my wife and I we're not actively looking for anything, but we've talked about what if we have to move out of the house we live in, which has the washer and dryer in the basement, and the bedrooms and the bathroom upstairs, and so we have to use stairs. And what if we have to move out, and where would we move to? Um, so we've talked about that. We're not actively looking for anything. Um, so affordable housing, um, and I have to go back and complete on transportation. Um, a third of all Hoosiers don't drive, and we have to make sure that by having complete streets, having places that you can get around without being in a car, so those folks can be active members of their community, and um, that's have to go back to transportation.
That's, that's very true. You need to be thinking about the future. You may very well live to be 100, and you can't do at 100 what you were doing when you were 25. So I just want to show you a postcard, and I don't know. Oh, it walks out my face. This came from AARP Indiana. It's about complete streets. And I assume it went out all across the state, Emily?
It went out all across the city. It's specific to
Across
Fort
the
Wayne.
city. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. And so if you're watching from another state, keep an eye out for information that comes from AARP. Also, websites that AARP has. There is a ton of information out there from AARP. Anything else that you two would like to add to our discussion?
I will just add, a huge thank you to volunteers like both of you that make a lot of our work that we do at AARP possible. The advocacy that comes from our volunteer base is what is shaping the future of communities and people being able to age in place. And so, if you're curious about being a volunteer, please reach out. You can head to our website and we're always looking for help in that area. But yeah. That's all I have. Thanks for having me, Nancy.
Oh, no problem. And Mike,
I have
anything
nothing to
else?
add. Thank you.
Nothing to add. Happy Friday. Um, I'd like to thank you both for being a part of this. And to those people who are watching and listening, we encourage you to subscribe to the Roost News. We have this is being videotaped and it will be on YouTube. And there are also audio versions that you can listen to. And invite your fellow volunteers and your fellow staff to pay attention to the Roost News because we're trying to share ideas from all different parts of the United States to spark an interest in other things that AARP can be doing. So, on behalf of the Roost News podcast team, thank you.
You're welcome.